Coming up this weekend, the main event of UFC 281, we have the Last Stylebender, Israel Adesanya, looking to right the wrongs, getting the win in the trilogy. He's taking on, to share MMA and Fitness's own, Alex Pereira, the former Glory middleweight and light heavyweight champ. That wasn't good enough. It was simultaneous. This
Pretty
guy
impressive.
is a legend in kickboxing. The record 33-7 with 21 knockouts. For Adesanya in kickboxing, 75-5, but 2 of those losses to Alex Pereira. We're going to have a lot to say about those 2 fights that they had in kickboxing, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to talk about the fact that this is in MMA. It's going to be in a big cage at MSG. Who's going to shoot for the first takedown? This is mixed martial arts. I really doubt we're going to see a lot in terms of the grappling from either of these 2 men. But when you focus in on this matchup, Matt, for Israel Adesanya to go from fighting Rob Wilkinson to where he is right now, and the run he's been able to go on, undefeated at middleweight, the lone loss to Jan Blachowicz, it's really been interesting to see this progression and evolution for Adesanya inside of the UFC's octagon.
And I would say he's one of the most effective stars they've been able to build in the UFC up until this point, because they built him the right way. His first fight, like you said, against Wilkinson, then against Marvin Vettori, then against Derek Brunson. It was before people knew who Marvin Vettori was. That's a difficult fight in hindsight. But then he fought Brad Tavares, I guess, before Derek Brunson. But there was an obvious progression in his level of opposition all the way up until the title. Now, I know he fought Anderson Silva, like, after the Derek Brunson fight, and that was weird. He kind of looked kind of human in that fight, but it was weird. That fight, I don't think you can look too much into it, because Adesanya was fighting like a childhood hero of his. And oddly enough, like I had mentioned in the previous fight, when technique really matters, and especially at this level, it does. Anderson Silva, if nothing else, even at this age, is still very technical with his striking. So that's why he's able to make it somewhat competitive with Adesanya. But I'll be very curious to see just what does Adesanya have to do in this fight to really win people over? And I know that's a weird thing to say, but it feels like at this point in people's careers, people are waiting for more out of Israel, because he had the knockouts early on. He was damaging guys really early on in his fighting, but now he has reached sort of that point fighting phase of his career. And I know, as 2 fellow Canadians, we love Georges St. Pierre more than anybody else. Hashtag still my goat. But GSP reached a certain point in his career where he started to fight in a bit of a safer manner, and there's no problem with that. You're going to hold your belt for a lot longer, but you do tend to fight outside of character. And for Adesanya, I'm curious if he is going to kind of go back into the more aggressive version of himself, because he does have history with this guy. This isn't some guy who he has no respect for his striking, who he knows, hey, I'm a former Glory kickboxer. This is just some MMA fighter. There's no way he can strike with me. Alex Pereira has beaten Israel Adesanya in the past, and he's one of the few fighters who, if you just look at what his pure kickboxing credentials are, he has probably a higher level background than even a guy like Israel Adesanya. So I think the storylines going into this fight are really interesting. But the problem is, it does feel like Pereira's been built up just to fight Adesanya, and that's what this whole build-up's been. So let's say he wins. Let's say he goes out there, hits him with a left hook like he did against Sean Strickland. I still think sort of the post-fight's going to be a little bit weird. They could do an immediate rematch, don't get me wrong. I'm sure they're going to. Adesanya's been a very long time champion at 185. I just don't really know what they do. I think Pereira, to me, reminds me a lot of Cody Garbrandt, where Cody Garbrandt felt like he was built up by Team Alpha Male to beat Dominick Cruz. And then he beat Dominick Cruz. And then it kind of went off the fairway, if you will, and didn't look all that great. For Pereira, I hope they weren't just building him to beat Adesanya, and this is kind of it for him.
That was kind of the plan. I mean, he beats Andreas Michailidis, struggles with the takedowns in the first round, second round starches him. He then takes on Bruno Silva, the former M1 Global champ. It's an absolutely amazing fight. Go back and watch that one. Pereira comes out in the winning end, and he didn't do too bad in the grappling exchanges.
I would say his cardio looked good too. It held up.
And his cardio did look good for a guy who 34, 35 years of age. Mixed martial arts isn't your art, it's kickboxing. And we know for Pereira, very early on in his career, let's do this MMA thing, get submitted. But you look at his last fight against Sean Strickland, you would have thought, hey, Shawnee, you're training at Extreme Couture. Eric Nixick likes you. Put the wrestling shoes on.
He did,
walks
though.
across and gets knocked out. So now we have to talk about the kickboxing fights, because if you look at it in 2016, you have a decision win for Alex Pereira. Go over to Wikipedia, they say it's a 5-round decision. Go anywhere else on the internet and watch the fight, it's 3 rounds. And in that fight, Matt, in 2016, it's in China. And Israel Adesanya does the most pro-China promo I've ever seen ripped. He walks out as the Black Dragon is his nickname, and he goes out there and he fights Alex Pereira. And watching the first round, it was very, very close. And watching the second round, it was very, very close. I thought Adesanya did enough in the first 3/4 of the round to win it, but in the last quarter of that round, Alex decided, you know what, flipping the switch, I'm throwing all the hooks I have, and he really did pour it on. And then in the third round, I thought Adesanya won, so you could have made a case that either guy won that fight. All three judges scored it 29-28 for Pereira to get the win in that one. And I thought in that fight, Matt, in my notes I had Adesanya fighting in those kickboxing fights to win. He's not fighting not to lose.
It's surprising how good pure kickboxers are at striking compared to like average UFC fighters. I know that that might sound like I'm discrediting the vast majority of MMA fighters, but these guys have forgot more about striking than most people on this card know about striking, and I can't stress that enough. Like, that's how high level both these guys are. I don't care who wins by knockout if someone does stop the other one. I'm not going to completely discredit the other ones, because these are two of the best pure strikers on planet Earth regardless of sports.
But if you do, you look at that first fight, you watch the things that Pereira did to have success, round 2, round 1, cutting off the squared circle. He was cutting off the ring in kickboxing. And as soon as he could get Adesanya out of that kicking range, that's when he was able to land those short leg kicks. And he's got so much zip. His hips are made of different things, I think. And if you look at it, the way that he floats it out there and pulls it back, and then he throws those hooks to close distance, when he's able to do that against Adesanya, he had tons of success. Fight 1, fight 2. The next fight takes place in 2017. It's in Brazil, and it's a round 3 knockout for Alex Pereira. But if you watch that fight, Adesanya again, fighting to win, not fighting not to lose. Round 1, I had it for Adesanya. Round 2, Adesanya was on point. He's landing every single right hand for Adesanya was landing on Pereira. And the other thing that I noticed out of Pereira fighting in kickboxing to Pereira fighting in MMA, Pereira shells up, and he likes to use his gloves to block a lot of the punches, which you see in the kickboxing fights. You see it a little bit in MMA. He still kind of defends this way. So if you have a fighter that throws a lot of hooks, Pereira does, but as an opponent, if you see an opponent doing that, they could have a lot of success against Pereira. But for Adesanya, right hands through the guard, right hands on the outside, the kicks are on point. He gets a standing 8 count at one point in the second round. He's pouring it on. And after the standing 8 count, Pereira has to clinch every time to wait for the referee to separate them.
And then he knocks him out maybe 15 seconds after that.
Third round starts, Pereira lands a left hook, starches Adesanya, and the fight's over.
And that's what I keep on going back to. Okay, let's say you think both these guys are similar level strikers, and of course they are. Let's just give them both a 10 out of 10, if you will. Adesanya has had a lot more time to refine his kickboxing into an MMA skill set, whereas for Pereira, even if you think he started out from a better foundation in kickboxing, maybe you think he is the better kickboxer, I just don't know if he's had enough time to completely refine it. And I know
What does that have to do in this fight, though?
This is what I'm going to say. I know we disagree on this and you don't think there's going to be a takedown attempt, and there might not be, but if there is, Adesanya in his MMA career has at least shown a few glimpses where his defensive grappling isn't terrible. I go back to what he was able to show against Kelvin Gastelum. He threatens with a triangle off of his back, which is able to then get the sweep, which is able to get him back up to his feet, and that's how he wins the 5th round. Again, I don't know if there is going to be a takedown between either one of these guys in this fight, and honestly, whoever goes for the takedown is probably only doing it because things on the feet aren't going well for them, but what I do think is if either guy is going to have any success on the ground, it's probably going to be Adesanya, just because we've at least shown some of those glimpses in his MMA game up until this point.
Adesanya, through his UFC tenure, has not earned a single takedown, and for Alex Pereira, we'll see if Glover Teixeira is able to add maybe a little bit of a wrinkle into his back pocket, and he could go for some. But yeah, you look at this matchup again, you have to think, the doubt, it creeps into the head of Israel Adesanya. That's going to be a lot of the conversation. And for Alex Pereira, a hand-picked opponent. Now, he was put into an advantageous position to get this fight. He obviously has the wins over in kickboxing. The first one, it was Shinsi. The second one, he was losing, but the third round starts and he comes out swinging and he lands that knockout blow. And it's not hey, we're going to count this one out. It's over. It's over to the point where Pereira's running around the ring and taunting him. And
they gave Adesanya like oxygen.
Yeah, he's in his corner and he's yelling at him like it was a win. So there was no doubt left in that fight. We have a look at your votes. We threw this one out there to you in the community tab. Almost 1,000 votes, 51% with the champion who's 23-1 in MMA, the 6-1 man, Pereira, getting 49% of your votes. We're going to have a look at the comments section. Luke is saying, I think Izzy wins comfortably from distance, unanimous decision. Hanky says, Alex loses every moment till he catches Izzy in the 4th round with an overhander right. Joe says, Izzy by stoppage inside 3 rounds. Different sports, different rule sets. There won't be a standing 8 count to save Alex this time. And we'll go with J-Miz. Old J Mizzle Hot Sauce saying, I think Izzy wins robbery decision. I don't think you're going to get to that point. We have a lot of comments over there. Make sure you float your comments into the comment section. It helps us out a tremendous bit. But the community over here at Fight Night Picks is the greatest. So Matt, for Alex Pereira, last time out, walked in. Easy business. Didn't take any damage against Sean Strickland. For Israel Adesanya, we talked about some of these wins. And you talk about it, fighting not to lose versus fighting to win, which he fought to win against Pereira. He was pouring it on him. He was pushing the pace. If you look at it for Adesanya, the only fight that we've seen recently where he's pushed the pace, that Paulo Costa fight, he wasn't messing
That was
around.
a while ago now, though, which is kind of wild. Like, that's been a little bit. We are a little removed from the Costa performance, but he did look great, and that was, I agree 100%, the last time we really saw that level of aggression out of Adesanya. I think Adesanya is a little bit better with his defense on the feet. I like the way he's able to slip in and out of the range, but I'll say this. I couldn't imagine the fear that you would have fighting Alex Pereira with 4-ounce gloves on. Like, okay, boxing gloves are one thing. Like, you can get knockouts in boxing, but boxing gloves are much bigger, so it lessens the impact. With 4-ounce gloves, I couldn't even imagine taking shots off the arms from a guy who hits as hard as he does. And I think there is an opportunity for him to win just because of that reason. He has incredible knockout power, very technical striker, 4-ounce gloves, but I do find myself picking Israel Adesanya. I like his volume a little bit more, and I do think he's going to be able to use the range to his benefit. And I know we disagree on this, but I could see him mixing in the clinch maybe just to try to kind of get rid of some of the separation of Pereira so he's not as explosive at range, because I think this fight going late is going to favor Adesanya. We've seen him go late in a lot of MMA fights, and he can get stronger as the fight goes on if he's not facing a wrestling heavy attack like he did against Blachowicz. So I like Adesanya in this fight.
To me, I like Adesanya in the matchup, and I'll tell you why. You look at their defenses. I talked about it with Alex Pereira. He really does rely on, I'm going to shell up, I'm going to wait till your attack's over, and then I pour on my own. And you see that a lot in kickboxing. You see that a lot in boxing. Just peekaboo, wait. And now I can counter.
Oh, yeah.
Now I can go. You've expended your energy, and now it's my opportunity. And for Pereira, a lot of his MMA training, you have to think, was spent on defending the takedowns, working to get back up to his feet. Did it against Michailidis. Did it against Bruno Silva. Not going to threaten with anything on the ground. I'm going to pop back up. I don't see a takedown in this fight. But the reason I have Israel Adesanya in the fight is he hasn't changed one critical part of his game from kickboxing to MMA, and it's his striking defense. He utilizes footwork, core movement, and head movement to get out of the way. Now, you might say, well, Craig, he got knocked out. It didn't work against Pereira in the second fight. I agree with you. You're right. The first fight, he had a lot of success in the second round at the start and in the third round with his movement, with his cardio, and with his volume, and I really do like the straight shots over the looping shots. Now, normally in a fight like this where it is so live and die by the sword, somebody with such a thunderous knockout blow with their hooks, they're able to get the win. But I will edge out Adesanya, and it doesn't have to do with the MMA training. To me, it is the defensive tactics, the volume from the outside. I like Adesanya's 3-level tiered approach to his kicks versus Pereira, who he'll throw spinning attacks, but when he did against Adesanya in kickboxing fights, Adesanya was able to move right out of the way, and it didn't cause him any issues. The leg kicks are definitely a big part of Pereira's game, but Adesanya is one of those guys, like we see Chris Gutierrez, whoop, I popped right out of the, whoop, I'm out of the way of those attacks, but I think this is an amazing fight. I love where the line's at as far as where the fans are voting in the community tab.
That's what makes fights so much fun. When people are that, like, down the middle on it, like, it makes more discussion happen. It makes you and your friends go back and forth about these fights, and that's what makes this so much fun at the end of the day. Like, it's not the fact that you have two great fighters. It's not the fact that these guys have a lot of Instagram followers. It's the fact that you and your friends have a lot of stuff to talk about these fights. That's what I always like the most about these pay-per-views, and I think this has a lot of fun storylines.
An amazing fight in this main event. Co-main event, Carlos Esparza taking on Zhang Weili. Before that, the possible fight of the year, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler. I know there's so many matchups that we've talked about. We've gone on for quite some time. We have question mark kicks. When is that, Matt?
It is 2 hours before the first prelim. It gives us a chance, to go back, check over any of the previous weigh-ins, say somebody missed weight or had a really difficult weight cut. Then it just gives us the chance to go back and switch our picks, but I'll just let the cat out of the bag right now. We're on the coldest of streaks when we are switching our picks. I don't want to know how many many weeks you've gotten them in a row. I know the last one I did was bad.
Last 4 I've done it on, I've gotten them wrong. But I will say this, we have a sidekick as well. It's live during the main card. You can hang out here on the channel. You want to continue that conversation. Fill up the chat. You and your cat sitting on the couch. You want to have a say with the Fight Night Picks guys. You can for sure. We've been having a great time with Fight Night Picks in 2022, and this should be an absolutely amazing card. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.